I see a few people here. Let's ask them.
Not really. I would want it to be more preventative.
No, it makes me lazier.
Do you have health insurance?
I do, yes.
Do you think you're healthy?
I would like to think so.
I mean, I try to.
When was the last time you used it?
I don't remember I've used it ever.
Back when I was sick,
I used it a couple of months back when I was sick.
I used it for my son. He had injured his arm.
When I last got sick.
If you look at all of the answers that we got, they all point to one thing. Insurance is built around a single moment, when someone gets sick. But everything before that, the habits, the early signs, the prevention, all of that sits outside of the system. I mean, we talk about health all the time, but the system itself is structured around illness. And that is exactly what creates that gap. Because if the system itself activates at the end of the journey, then who is really responsible for everything that happens before that? So we went to Bangalore to find out.
Hi,
Tanvi.
Ryan. How's
Welcome.
it going?
Good.
Thank you for having us here. It's a
Yeah,
lovely space.
We've been looking forward to this for a while.
Yes, let's get started.
Yeah.
We are living in the most health-aware generation ever. Social media is constantly pushing information at you, advice on everything from gut health to sleep cycles. But awareness is only part of the equation, because knowing what to do and actually doing it consistently in the middle of long work days, stress, and everyday life are two very different things. So if everybody is trying, why is it not working? At the same time, healthcare as a system is not always easy to navigate. There are hospitals, doctors, diagnostics, treatments, and at the top is insurance, deciding what gets covered, when and how. So the real question is, can healthcare and insurance ever work together?
So India spends about 55% of healthcare costs out of pocket, right? And even salaried employees avail insurance only when they fall sick.
Yeah.
What did you see here that made you want to start Loop?
Yeah, I think more than the focus on insurance and payments, it was actually about keeping people healthy. So my co-founder's father actually got a heart attack, and he is the head of an IT services business, very health literate, scientifically literate, had friends who had heart attacks and still couldn't prevent it for himself. And we just figured that if it's that hard to prevent sickness and illness for somebody who's set up to have that, it's very difficult for everyone else. And if you think about, on a whole, how do you pay for all of this, right? If there's unnecessary treatments, procedures, surgeries that are happening because people either aren't diagnosing early enough or they're not getting the right treatment fast enough, that to us felt like a kind of a big problem to take on.
So why is the current system completely focused on benefiting from illness rather than health?
It's because the system that pays for it, which is insurance, is kind of diametrically opposed to the people who deliver healthcare, which is, the hospitals, the clinics, the labs, right? So one side, hospitals, clinics, labs want to increase bills and insurers want to decrease bills, and kind of caught in the middle is the patient or the family, right? Who's just trying to get the best care that they can. If you look at kind of the annual reports of hospitals today, they specifically mention metrics like average revenue per bed, right? So and if you're a doctor working in a hospital system, unfortunately, like, you're not just there to deliver care, you also have financial targets to meet. Patients and employees, family members, really, they're actually stuck navigating all of this. And so I think that's the reason. What we see is this possibility of bringing them together in the payer-provider model. So where the insurer is actually involved in delivering some element of healthcare to keep people healthy, and help them kind of navigate the system, right?
Today, getting access to healthcare is not the problem. In most cities, you can find a doctor within minutes, but you don't really know where to start. For a long time, healthcare in India was built around a single person, the family doctor. Today, nearly half the corporate workforce is new to the city, no trusted doctor and no clear starting point. So when you fall sick, you're not just dealing with illness, you're navigating the system by yourself.
And you are trying to bring back the concept of a family doctor and that to inside of a corporate wrapper, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work? How are you doing it?
Yeah, so I think, what is a family doctor, right? It's that person that you and your family would always go to for everything, right? Whether it's your dad's hypertension, your mom's varicose veins, your cough or cold when you were a kid, right? It's one person that you really trusted, right? And so what we've done is we've created kind of a massive family doctor concept across our clients, where we have about 90 to 100 doctors in-house who do 30-second chat with our members, any small health question that they have. to even bigger questions. That's something that we help them with. There's a lot of room to actually help like a huge part of the workforce who doesn't have kind of a go-to doctor.
Modern work might actually be making us sick. That really sounds extreme, right? But look at what a typical day looks like. You wake up and the first thing you do is check your phone. You work for long hours, drink too much coffee, and then try to fix it later with a workout. But if you zoom out, you're constantly adjusting. And over time, those small adjustments begin to add up. India is already the diabetes capital of the world, and these problems are now showing up in much younger people. So even when people are trying to stay healthy, they're doing it within a structure that doesn't fully support it.
So, your India Workforce Health Index report said that we are one of the most health aware generations, but we're not the healthiest. We
Yeah.
get our steps in, we take our supplements, but how do you explain this paradox? We're still very, very unhealthy. We're anemic, we have cardiovascular issues. Like, how do you explain this paradox?
Yeah, I think the reason that people are still unhealthy is that executing all of that is still very difficult, right? Like just remembering that your dad needs a quarterly blood test for his hypertension, that's probably not getting done. Your own diet, it's very hard to stick to things. It's very hard to stick to working out. And so, and I think work stress and like the modern workplace is a stressful place. And especially after COVID, I think work hours are higher, work stress is higher, people are bringing work home with them more often. So I think it doesn't leave that much space, I think, for people to like execute the information that they have.
So people are trying to solve major deficiencies with supplements, right? You just get it over the counter, you pop one, you think, okay, the problem has been solved.
Yeah.
Has the wellness industry somehow given an illusion that it can all be fixed without actually fixing the underlying issue?
I think so. I think there are a lot of charlatans in the wellness industry who peddle various solutions that don't work. I think fundamentally it's about, we all know this, right? Any of us who've battled our own health, right? It's like good sleep, clean food, exercise, some supplementation. But I think there's a lot of money to be made around assuaging people's fears and, giving them kind of candy that'll make them healthier, but it won't, right? And so I think, but there's great folks. I think like Liver Doctor, Jitendra Choksi, the founder of Fitter. I think there's lots of really notable voices now who are really speaking out against, sort of poor food quality, or it's like the supplements industry oftentimes having lots of poor quality product and ingredients, right? So I think there's those voices now that are coming out against this. But I do feel like, yes, unfortunately, when people are confused, they often, they're looking for a guru to kind of solve all their problems, right? And I think the wellness industry is kind of prey to that. If we want to get really serious about improving the kind of health of employees and their families, I think we have to do really targeted interventions. They have to have access to doctors. We have to kind of like go really deep and dig in. And so even in the corporate wellness space, I do think there's these kind of like checkbox activities of, getting your employees up and dancing and sweating, but that's not really meaningfully moving like health outcomes for people.
This space has always been dominated by big players. Corporate health insurance scaled massively, becoming a standard part of employment for millions of people across India. And the industry itself kept expanding. In the last financial year alone, health insurance premiums crossed 1.2 lakh crore, growing at over 9% year on year. On paper, it is massive, but somewhere along the way, the experience did not keep up. Now that is also starting to change. A new wave of insurtech and health startups is rethinking how this actually works for both employees and employers. Because despite all of that scale, for most people, it still feels outdated.
So there are a lot of traditional giants in this space. There are upcoming companies, there are startups that are entering this space. So what gave investors the confidence to back this idea?
I think relative, if I just speak about competition, relative, there's traditional insurance brokers, these global insurance brokers like Marshes and Aons of the world. They're behemoths. They've been at it for 50, 100 years, selling insurance to companies. I think we've just really out-innovated them, made it much easier for the HR to administer these programs, made it much easier for employees to adopt and utilize these services. And I think relative to the insurtechs as well, our kind of growth trajectory has been pretty massive. So we serve 1 million lives. So that's like Plum, Nova, and Paz combined in terms of just like kind of market share and the number of lives that we serve. And I think for investors, it's a very attractive market because it's large and it spans some of the hardest problems that we'll have to deal with, which is an aging population that needs to figure out how to get healthcare and how to pay for it. So ostensibly, I think today we work with 1 million lives. that'll be 10 million soon, right? And when we have 10 million lives who we're kind of accountable to and responsible for, that's a lot of healthcare that we can route from worse places to better places. That's a lot of people we can say, here's the right doctor to go to who has the best outcomes. And so, being in the middle of the health insurance and healthcare delivery industries, I think just the TAMs of both of those are really big. And I think having kind of like a modern consumer experience is very important.
Healthcare today produces an enormous amount of data. Every test, consultation, prescription, and every claim leaves behind a trail. Globally, healthcare accounts for nearly 30% of all data generated. And in India alone, millions of these interactions happen every single day. On paper, this should make healthcare one of the most informed systems in the world. But most of this data still sits in silos. Hospitals have one view, insurers have another, and patients are often left stitching things together on their own. But what if all of this data could actually be connected and used in real time?
Do you think AI is going to fundamentally change how medical decisions are made?
Yeah. I think clinical decision support and this whole idea that a computer or machine guides a doctor, I think that's already happening. Today at Loop, we have an AI co-pilot for all of our medical advisors that kind of ingests what our members are saying. It helps them understand what the probable diagnosis might be, the probable or recommended treatments. It helps them understand adverse drug interactions. So if they're prescribing X, to not also prescribe Y, right? So I think there's real use cases where that kind of co-pilot is very valuable to our doctors today, and we'll continue to build on that. But I still fundamentally believe that there needs to be a human endpoint. I don't think we are ready to receive life-altering care from just like a chat interface today.
So relative to the West, where the GDP spend on healthcare is much, much higher, where do you see India moving?
Oftentimes in healthcare circles in India, we always hear this concept of India is only spending 3 or 4% of GDP on healthcare. The West is spending 15 or 17%. I think we all know and have felt either through our own experiences, through what we've heard, that 18% of GDP being channeled in the West is not always driving the right outcomes, especially in the US, right? I think, why is that, right? There's lots of layers of intermediaries and middlemen. I think preventing the direct benefit of investment from going directly back to members. And there's a lot of, I would say, poor incentives and still a lot of misalignment, especially in US healthcare. I think India has an amazing chance to rebuild the architecture from the ground up. I think the way that UPI built payment rails that set everybody on a common platform, the same Niti Aayog is building the National Claims Exchange, which also creates way better data transfer for insurance. It's easier for people to move from one insurer to another to improve their claims experience. I think overall it's a huge opportunity for India to kind of build the right architecture and the right rails for healthcare and insurance today.
A lot of what is driving India right now comes down to its workforce. People are working longer hours, taking up more responsibility. And in the middle of all of that, healthcare is something that people are still trying to figure out on their own. This is exactly where companies like Loop Health are trying to make a difference. Instead of treating insurance as something that shows up at the very end, they're trying to bring healthcare into the picture much, much earlier, making it a part of how people manage their health. And for them, this is business.